everyone. We got Andrew Robertson here. He is the builder and developer for Watch Me Fly, and he's going to take us around and sort of show us different bits and cool tricks and things that people might not know that it can do. So, Andrew, go ahead and take us away.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I guess to probably start, I should give you a bit of a history of why Watch Me Fly came along and where it came from and where it is today. Because a lot of people sort of ask questions. I think even Patrick, you asked me earlier, how does Watch Me Fly relate to what the FAI are doing, etc. So let me just share my screen. May as well bring it up for people who don't necessarily know what it is. Okay. So assume you can see that.
It's coming up.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, it's a long way from Australia. The internet takes a while to get over there. Yeah, so the history of Watch Me Fly is, I think I've always been interested in, my job is essentially in the web and the internet. And in fact, my career started in the mid-90s when the internet was invented, and I started building websites for Auntie Monkey. People might remember that years ago. And just always played around with the idea of how do we get more information about ballooning available to the public and to balloonists. So that, what was originally a little magazine then became a social network of people sharing photos and videos on Auntie Monkey. But then I was that all died off a little bit. And then I kind of had this idea of maybe we should start looking at things like people being able to share their flights and doing things like logbooks and sharing photos of their balloons and pilot profiles and stuff like that. So I kind of built that up as a concept and an idea. And then this all sort of happened about 4 or 5, or probably more than that, 5 or 6 years ago. But then in parallel, what happened was the FAI, so the Ballooning Commission, the CIA, were looking at what was going to become the next generation of loggers. So before that, we used to have the loggers that you'd put in your balloon, you'd hit a button, then after the flight, you'd go back and hand the logger over, and they'd take the SD card out and download your data, and you'd have to have this process. And they were looking at doing this new idea of having it a bit more connected so that everything was being passed data in real time. And they approached me because they realized I had this database of pilots, and I had the technology that was sitting there that had information about events in it. And they kind of talked to me about how can we start hooking up Balloon Live, and is it possible to use this platform as the repository for capturing all this data from competitions in real time. So it's like, all right, cool, let's experiment with it. So we started using Watch Me Fly initially as the ability for events to set up their events, to have their pilot lists, and then they would actually start using it to simply capture data. And then the scorers would then download the data out of Watch Me Fly and put it into another scoring system. So it kind of ran like that for a while, and people got used to it. It was a nice ability, so I'll even show you now. Here, if I go into my profile, you can start seeing that pilots were able to access their own data as well. So I could go in and look at a flight. I can see exactly what I've done in my flight, where things like marker drops were happening. I could download the data and put it into the likes of Aussie Explorer, etc. So that was kind of the first phase, and that became quite successful. And what they then approached me about was, how about we look at doing a scoring system? And I'd kind of played with the idea before of like, would it be possible to create a scoring system within Watch Me Fly that could use this data in real time? And I'd never seen a scoring system before. I've always been a pilot, never knew what happened behind the scenes. I knew that they used to do lots of number crunching, and then a few hours later, a piece of paper would appear on a window outside the competition center with the results. And so when I was talking to them about doing it, they said, well, do you want to see some of them, how they work? And I decided, you know what, no, I'm going to just come in with this with a totally different mindset of not knowing how it's done, but sort of approach it from how do I think it should be done.
Yeah.
My main motivation, sorry, jump in if you got questions, but my main motivation behind everything I've been doing in this is how do I save time? Because anyone who's been to a competition knows that time is so critical, whether it's pilots who just want to get more sleep or eat between flights, whether it's scorers who just want to get data out really quickly and not have to spend hours and hours crunching things and spreadsheets and the rest. whether it's target team, I build a target team tool so that the target team can put the data in as they're measuring that goes in real time back to the scorers, rather than having to do it on bits of paper and then either sending a photo or driving back with a piece of paper that then had to be manually entered. All these things are time savers. And so that's always been my motivation, is how do I make things happen quicker?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool. It's, in the United States anyways, like it seems to be really catching fire the last couple of years. So.
Yeah. Well, it's been great because it's also, I've found over the years that there's been a lot of kind of early adopters and advocates for it. So Paul Petrin, for example, the first time we did the scoring in Watch Me Fly, we were flying an event in Australia in Canowindra, and I was also directing it, but I was also flying it. And I was the first pilot off. First task was a pilot to get goal, and Paul was scoring for us remotely from Michigan. And we wanted to test out how cool this could be. So I said to him, all right, I'm going to tell you, I texted him a message to say, all right, I'm about to hit my logger mark. And I hit the logger mark, and within 1 minute, he had posted a provisional result online of that first task within a minute of the first marker being hit. And then we suddenly had this whole dilemma. I was like, oh my gosh, what's the rules say about having results being published in real time mid-flight? Because it had never been done before.
Yeah.
So like, all right, we know that can be done. Now we just probably need to back off a bit and wait till the flight's finished before we publish results, till the results can be starting to manage that.
Well, that's been one of my favorite parts about it, is like the flight's done, flight window closes, and like you can pretty much almost immediately start seeing provisionals come in.
Yeah. And look, to be honest, it's all ready to go that we could make it automatic. Provisionals, there's no reason why we can't have provisionals as people are hitting it automatically get posted. It's just, I don't think balloonists and the rule book aren't ready for that. The technology is well and truly there. It wouldn't take me much to do it, but is
there anything in the rule book about that?
Well, there's not really, but I think it's more people going, well, hang on, is there an advantage if I see that Johnny got 3 meters on a result and somebody else got this, and I can make a decision based on I know that I can slot in somewhere between there and I don't have to get a 2 meter result. Like, honestly, it's a bit like sailing. In Australia, we've got the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, and there was a huge uproar when they allowed everybody to access each other's tracking. But then it just became a different part of the game. It's like, okay, now we can now see what everyone's doing. It doesn't really help you, but it's just a different progression of what is going on.
Yeah.
It can go there, and I'm sure it will sometime, especially because one of the big motivators of the FAI is to make ballooning much more a spectator sport. And we now have the data, we have the stuff. So we're now looking at ways of doing like they do with America's Cup sailing, 3D visualizations of balloons flying to targets. That's kind of my ultimate dream of this, is like, imagine on TV, you've got, or if you're at Saga and they've got a big screen showing balloons on the screen on 3D visualization before they actually get to the target. And then there's 200,000 people cheering as they hit a target. Like, that's where we're going with it. And we're not far off. We just need to find the right people who can help us build those tools.
That's definitely what I think, or at least that's what we want to see also, is like, we want to see more spectators and people watching it in general. So
yeah. So I guess I can show you some of the things, the key features of what people are using and how it's used. So for those who aren't really familiar with it, it has been set up to be used by both competitors and event organizers and scorers. So I can give you a bit of the pilot view of it, and then I can jump in and show you behind the scenes what some of the other what the actual event team are using it for, how they can see the data. Because I think, again, it's really important to understand how scorers think, how directors think, what they're looking at, because that will help you as a competitor understand how essentially you should be thinking about things, or even how you should be questioning results. Or, sometimes you'll see a result that's not exactly what you think it is. It's good to kind of know what they're doing in the background. It's not them just making stuff up.
What could have gone wrong along the process.
Exactly. And one of the biggest things, and I've been involved enough from the organisation side and the official side, a lot of complaints will always be questioning logger marks, and that wasn't where my logger mark was, or I declared this. And before that question should ever be asked, there's a few things you can look at yourself. So as I kind of showed you before, you've got access to all the same data as the scoring team does. You have full visibility of all of the raw data coming out of the loggers. So that's what an IGC file is just all the raw data. And you can import that into Aussie Explorer and check out the tracks. You can download all the waypoints. You can get all that information yourself to look at it before you question it. Or if you want to study your flights and understand what you did and what you did wrong, it's really helpful to get the real data back from what you've done for your flight. Or if you're like me and you forget how long you flew for and you just want your logbook updated, you can just get that as well. But yeah, like this is just a fun event that we've used as a practice event. So when I'm practicing and training, you know, we can see the information exactly where I took off from, exactly where my marker drops are. If you've got declarations, they'll appear there. If you're at an event where there is a target, you'll also see, I'm just randomly clicking on things here. You can see exactly where the target's been set, the MMA. You can see exactly your path, where it went through. If there's PZs, the information's available for you as well to see. If you get a PZ violation, you'll be able to see what you did wrong. All of that information is there and available for you. So before you start questioning anything, just double check this, because this is the data that they're looking at. The classic is questioning when you thought you got 5 meters and you got 10 meters on a result because you pushed the button. This will tell you exactly where you were. You know, even go and look at satellite view and go, oh yeah, okay, that's where I was. Maybe I pushed the button too late. You know, everything's got lag. If you're like Sean Kavanagh, you'll drive up and down the road and practice hitting buttons on intersections, working out what the lag time is on any device. All of those things are just really helpful to be able to look at that data and analyze it. So it's all there. If you want to go and check it out, you can go and check out all of your stuff. This is all private data, so the only people who have access to this is yourself and the event officials.
Yeah, I was just going to ask: is there a way to see other tracks?
No. Look, honestly, you can't see other pilots' tracks. We did for a while have the ability on there to start sharing your location. At the time, the servers that we were running weren't capable of handling the data load, and so we sort of deactivated that because we didn't want everybody just hammering the tracking stuff to start. Because you think about it, we're sending every pilot, if you go to a world, you've got 110 pilots sending a packet of data every second with location information. So there's a huge amount of data being processed. And then if you get every person's crew and every other pilot trying to hit the same server to try and get the same information, it becomes quite heavy. So we are looking at different ways to isolate balloon like tracking from the scoring side of things so that we can have that available again. So that's a project we're looking at over the next year or so.
Would it be possible, I guess, I mean, it's easy enough to download the tracks or whatever, but like, could you set like a flag so that you could view the track on Google Map easily?
Possibly, yeah. My list of things to do.
I'm just throwing ideas, not anything.
So there is a contact. Go to the contact page and send a request in. That's my cop out.
Yeah.
A few other things just to be aware of. So pilot profiles, as a pilot in the list, you can update your information. We automatically add any of your past results. Again, my idea behind this is to really make it more of a spectator sport so people can understand and see more information about who the balloonists are, and we can start building that up. The other thing that's worth noting is you can also come in and look at your respectful flying score. So fortunately, I'm at 100%, but the idea behind this is it's a new rule that if you get penalised under Rule 10.1 or 10.2, which is collision or dangerous flying, and the event has opted in to be part of the respectful flying score, which is essentially any Category 1 or Category 2 event and many others that choose to be part of it, you'll get a penalty applied to you as a pilot, not just for the event, and that will remain for, I can't remember, it's either 36 months or 24 months. I think it's 24. But you can come in and see any of that information. So if you do get penalised, you'll know it during the event, but you can also see where you stand. Nobody gets to see your number except for yourself. The idea is that if you're above 50%, you'll be green. If you're below 50%, you'll be yellow, which means you've kind of been a bit naughty. And then if you get to 0, you're going to get a red flag, and there's actually rules that state that you won't be able to compete at certain events. So it's good to keep track of this, and you will be able to see any information about what you've been given. So it's all very transparent. So that's kind of the pilot view. There's a lot of other things you can do. You can go in and look at events. People are pretty familiar with that. A couple of things that were then added to Watch Me Fly as a result of having all this information was a couple of years ago, we added the world ranking list. So the official FAI world ranking list has been added into Watch Me Fly. So a lot of this gets actually calculated automatically based on the data that we have from the results from worlds, and different countries will submit their ranking lists and we feed off that. And so it's nice to we've got enough data now that you can see historically any changes that have occurred over the years. You can see movement of pilots. So we're really trying to make it, again, something that is more providing information to the public and yourselves, and make it a little bit more sort of shiny than ballooning used to be, which was a bit of a secret. Nobody knew what was going on or how it worked.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I mean, even being able to go back, a couple of years and looking at some event that you flew and what your scores were, like, I think that's awesome, because I mean, you probably have a lot more than Zarek and I, but there's a lot of events that you've flown that, like, I don't even remember where I finished.
Yeah, exactly. That's unfortunately, you only have to look at my profile. It's also depressing seeing the trend of your results going the wrong direction. It's like, there was always the running joke, I always came fourth at our nationals, and you can sit there going, yeah, you're right, I used to always come fourth, always short of it. So yeah, it definitely helps having all that data and that information and seeing the past stuff. The other thing that's just recently happened, and a lot of the US will know about this, is that we're also now using Watch Me Fly to help with the BFA, the National Eligibility List. I can never get that word right. The NEL list. So what we're doing in here is any event that is being run as part of your eligibility list is going to be in here, and using the scoring and the results to be able to give you the information you need and what the ranking looks like. So Zarek knows it all too well. It used to be a very time-consuming manual process. We now have automated a lot of this. So for example, we can go back and look at 2004. We can see all of the events that contributed to the list. We can also see any of the tasks which have been recalculated as what's known as positional scoring rather than proportional scoring. But we also then have your ranking list in here, so you can see all the pilots, where they stand. You can go in and look at individual pilots and what their results were. All of that information which you've had before is now just feeding automatically out of all that data in Watch Me Fly. And as a result, you're going to find a lot more of your events in the US are now going to be using Watch Me Fly's scoring, because it just makes sense, because everything becomes automated as part of that.
I think this will be a huge bonus for the events in the US, because it'll let us publish the scores a lot faster for the NEL, because now it's sort of a click of a button, and it'll also prevent a lot more errors, because the BFA number should be accessible because it's attached to the pilot. It's not just coming from every different event. And then that's a lot less error prone with changing the scores over.
And I got to say, having worked on this, I got to give you guys credit to, this is the equations and the method that you're using to calculate this list is top notch. Like, it is really clever. It took me a while to get my head around the logic behind it, but once I did, it's like, yeah. And you can tell, because the right people that you would expect are in the top half of the field.
Yep.
It just shows that those calculations work. And a similar thing with the world ranking list. It's some tricky maths in there, but it really does work well. So thumbs up to us, and it was a fun project to work on. All right. So in the interest of time, I thought I'd just shift gears and show you a little bit of what's behind the scenes and what the scorers and officials are looking at and how they will set up flights and events.
For sure.
So sorry, go ahead. You got a question?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So what I've done is I've got a demo event. You're seeing my view here. So I'm the super user, so I've got access to absolutely everything, but there's a lot here you won't need to look at. But what happens is each event will have the ability to manage everything within Watch Me Fly in what we call the competition center. And there's different roles. So, directors have different abilities to do things from target team, etc. Essentially how it works is that they have their event. Within their event, they'll have all the competitors set up within that event. And these are all dummy people. So don't think you recognize anyone here because I made them all up with AI. But all of the information around the pilots is all managed through this system, so they can create the official pilot list. And then you'll see here on this dashboard, what they then have is the idea of setting up different flights. So I'm going to jump into a flight. So again, this is all dummy data, but flight 1 here, what we can see is a lot of information around this flight. So we have all of the tasks that were set up, so they can go in and set up all the individual tasks. And when they do that, they're providing all the coordinates of the targets, any of the rules around timing, those sorts of things, so that the scoring is going to automate a lot of their processing as well as a lot of the penalties. This is where they can also set up things like the task data sheet or upload a physical one. So a lot of directors prefer to use their own templates, so they'll upload it into Watch Me Fly, so it's available on the website. We're also managing all the digital flight report forms. So again, back to what I was talking about before about trying to save times. One of the things that used to bug me the most was when you finished a flight, you had to fill out a physical paper form and then drive back to the competition center and hand it in. Whereas I realized that if we could do this digitally, you can sit in the refueling queue and just fill it out, hit submit and send it off. It means the scorers get the information faster. It means you're not messing around having to get dropped off at the competition center while your crew refuels. You can go to breakfast, like things happen a lot quicker, and it probably saves you 2 hours a day. So that was another motivator to do that. But they've got access to everything. They've got access to all of the Balloon Live data. And then you can see here for each individual pilot, we've been able to calculate a lot of stuff, and we can see where each pilot sits. So this guy, David Williams, we can see that he's filled out his flight report form and it's been approved. We can go in and look at the flight report form. So they've got all the information about what you have entered versus what also has been calculated. So we can see here in the fly in, this guy didn't drop his Logger Mark II, but he did get an estimated result of 2 meters that he thought he got. So you can compare that with the target team's results. It gives all that visibility very quickly and very easily to the scoring team. And they can also go in and see where your marker drops were. So, there's the marker drop number 4 was sitting on that road. So they've got all that information available. So they're making decisions based on real-time data.
So if something looks wonky, then they can look at it and there's more debugging tools for them.
Correct, exactly. And that's what they'll spend a lot of their time doing. They also can go in and check penalties. So what happens is a penalty will be calculated by Watch Me Fly. So for example, here, it was an early launch of 2 minutes because we know the launch period and we know when this pilot took off. Again, they can go and check the pilot's profile and see, when did they actually take off? Is that a legitimate is that a legitimate error, or is that just something because they were flying at 1 foot above the ground for 10 minutes and doesn't trigger a launch? Those sorts of things. They've got that data available. And again, they can see everything you've done in there. So data is really helping them make those decisions.
I guess more out of curiosity on my part, what is the threshold for it to figure out that you launched?
Yeah, I've used the same methodology that Marc-Andre created when they built the first loggers, and it's a combination of a change in vertical in altitude, a change in horizontal distance, and a change in vertical speed. So using those 3 metrics means that, if you really slowly fly up, it's still going to pick you up because you've either gone horizontally or vertically. Yep. Or if you do sit at tree top or grass height for 10 minutes, we can see change in speed. Might not see change in altitude, but we can understand that, yeah, okay, that's a trigger as well. So there's all sorts of variations in the algorithm that pick that up. And it's pretty accurate. I mean, sometimes it misses, but it's accurate enough that, you know, we can see that most people have got the right time. Occasionally there'll be an outlier and then you check it. The other one is the landing time too, because I tell you what, it's still a lot of people that just leave their loggers tracking. And I've had people in the US where I've actually messaged them because I can see them in Walmart after they've had breakfast and they're still tracking. And it freaks them out. It's like, can you get me some marshmallows while you're in Walmart? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I can see you. And then you better, I threaten that I'm going to invoice them for the data processing.
I don't know what you mean. I've definitely never left my tracking on.
Well, I have to admit I've done it myself too. So, so yeah, a lot of data there, and then there's a lot of things for the jury, like things like penalty reports, so we can see exactly what penalties have happened for that flight. So the jury can have visibility of everything without being able to change anything, which is also really important. That's all available for them. Then we have other tools like our flight calculator, where this is where if there's anything they need to calculate, they can do it really easily. So they can go in and do things like show me everybody's task 1 logger mark in relation to, I don't know, this fly-in target. And you can run these calculators, and this will give them a really fast view of, all right, this is what everybody got. So you can see there in that form, there's all combinations of whether they want to enter coordinates, they want to select goals from goal lists. They've got launch points, landing points, all the targets, declaration points. So it's giving them those tools that really, if the director gets creative and does some weird race to a line that you have to fly through this polygon first or whatever it is, this tool pretty much allows them to do all those calculations and get exactly the results that they need.
Do some more ad hoc tasks almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other classic one is if somebody does use the wrong logger, like, you know, Watch Me Fly will automatically score based on logger mark 1 to logger goal 2. But if somebody accidentally used the wrong logger mark, they can come in here and say, all right, you've complained, so you actually ended up using logger mark 2 to your declared point. They can calculate and get you a result and then give you your 25-point penalty. Yep. So it's also helping with a lot of that debugging or just finding results for pilots who've made a mistake. So that's a lot of tools, but then you get to the actual scoring side of things. And again, this is where, having not seen other scoring systems, this is where I kind of went down this path of how would we logically do this, knowing that we have this data sitting there. How do we automate a lot of it? So see everything here, we've got all our results, they're all sitting final, but I can walk in here and have a look at, for example, this task here. And we have a lot of different tabs available. So I can go from target team and see exactly what the target team have entered through their target team tool. We can have the coordinates of the target, and these are things that they've actually punched in when they've measured the marker. But we can also see when pilots missed the MMA or whether they flew past without dropping a result. We can also see the flight report form information in a table view, so we can see exactly what everybody has filled out around their flight. Oh, sorry, for this task. But then when they're also doing the calculations, there's things we can do here by what we rerun what's called an intelligent results. And what this will do is automatically calculate the results based on all the data. Because we know the target coordinates and we know the logger marks, and we also know what the target team's entered. So when we run this, it will calculate and give you its calculation of what the actual result is and tells you how it got it. So it can say, all right, yeah, well, this one was measured using the logger mark, where this one here was measured using the target team. So it's always looking for the best result. So if you drop a marker or you do a logger mark, it will work out the marker was measured within the MMA, so therefore that will take precedence. But if it's outside the 50-meter MMA, it will then use the logger result as well. So all of that's automated. And that's kind of what I was saying before, is it's getting to that point where that doesn't need someone to push a button. It can just be calculated in real time, and that's where it probably will go. And then we're just walking through, and then the officials will then go through the process of progressing the results through provisional, official, can have official versions if things change. So here we've got a dangerous flying penalty that was found later on. It's been able to be flagged as a change. So when they look at the results, you can be able to see all that information. And then obviously final. So as I said, it's kind of giving them a logical view of how to calculate and get these results out really quickly and automated. Any questions from you guys on that?
I don't think so.
The calculator is pretty cool. I didn't realize that it could do, like, I was aware of it, but I didn't realize it had that many options for.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. Pros is every time someone comes up with a challenging thing, it's like, all right, now you want a polygon, and now you want last marker in the last track point within a polygon where you had last one before you get in the polygon. Like it keeps growing.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to show is also around PZ infringements. So this actually gives the officials a very nice view, because what happens is the organizers they will upload all the PZs. Sorry, PZs in your language, in them, and then they can actually see exactly where all these are, what they are, so we can see altitude, etc. And then at the end of every flight, what they'll do is they go and process all the data, and it compares your track to every PZ, and it looks at, did you go into it? How deep did you go into it? What should be the penalty as a result? So it's a processing that happens, and then it will automatically decide, all right, these are all the pilots that have infringed it, and they will get flagged as a PZ penalty, and they can come in and see exactly where that infringement's happened, how deep they've gone into it. And sometimes it's not right, sometimes it is, but they can then, check that everything looks legitimate. Sometimes you might get a spike in data and it accidentally puts you into above the blue PZ. And they can say, all right, I'm going to give that one, but normally it's pretty accurate that you stuffed up. Shouldn't have done that.
But all that stuff is not optional, is not the right word, but it recommends it, and then the
yeah, I don't do any automatic. It's always recommending to them, not automatically applying it. So somebody, if you see you've been given a penalty, somebody has actually gone in and gone, all right, yes, that looks legitimate. Apply it. It's not just the machine going, I think you did this, and it's so it's always again, it's just tools that are making recommendations, but everything is always being double checked by the scorers.
So if an event wanted to set up like a training for their scoring teams, is there a way for them to go through the training center? Great
thing to have brought up, so I was going to forget to do it. Now, this for everybody is really good to know. We have a learning center, and the learning center is available to anyone who's signed up to Watch Me Fly. And in here, there's a lot of things you can use. All right. So lots of like help files and stuff like that explaining how things work. So mostly for officials, like, how to use the scoring settings, what do they all mean, how to configure your maps, because everything has to have maps configured within Watch Me Fly, so it knows where you are in the world when it's calculating things, especially if you're using like a 4-4 coordinate. That could be the same place in 3,000 different locations, so we do a lot of that. We also have training videos, so if you're not sick of me talking away, there's stuff that's relevant for pilots of how to use Balloon Live and Watch Me Fly. There's all these training videos for scorers, directors, really just tools to allow them to understand how to use each of these tools. So I'm always putting new ones of those up whenever we launch anything new. But to answer your question, there is actually a scorer's course that anyone can do. So I'm sure we're going to get a rush of this. But you can come in here and sign up and register for it. Takes some people probably about 3 hours to work through. But what we have is a whole lot of lessons of how to do things. Because I've done it, I can jump ahead. But you get in here, it's got a video that it has me again talking, explaining how things do, and you'll get your own event set up. So you have your own training event that's already pre-populated with some pilots, got some Balloon Live data, and you can go through these exercises and it will rate you at the end. It'll give you a pass or a fail. And then once you pass, you can progress. And then at the end, you'll get certified. So I think to date we've got 127 certified scorers. And what's really nice is we've got this list now of people who know how to use the system. So when events are looking at getting volunteers and stuff, they know they can reach out to these people and they know how to use the system and they're pretty experienced. So it's worth doing, even as a pilot, if you want to understand how scoring works, so you can start playing the rules. It's worth sitting down and just going through it. So half the people on this list, I would say, are pilots who are never going to be sitting in a scoring room. It's definitely worth having a play with if you want. But there's a form there, you fill out the registration form, and then within a day or two, I'll set you up. And then I'm here to help if you've got any questions with it.
Yeah, I went through that course a couple of years ago, I think, and it was pretty nice, and it was cool to see the back end and understand like what's actually going on.
To be honest, look, I mean, it covers the basics, and there is so many things I'm adding and new tools and stuff. It doesn't cover it all. It would take me 5 times as long if I had to keep updating the lessons, but it certainly will give you a good grounding, and then you can continue exploring and playing with the new things as well.
Is there any way to do like practice tasks, not necessarily like for an event, but like let's say over the winter an event director wants to just like make task sheets? Is there any option for that? Or
yeah, look, they reach out to me. It depends on the circumstance. We've got to be very careful. Unfortunately, we've had a few people sort of writing the system and trying to cheat and not have to, because there is, whenever an event sets up, they will pay a setup fee, and then each pilot will pay for their Balloon Live access, although through the BFA that's now changing. Just have a chat to us. I mean, if it's legitimate, they just want to learn, they can use their training thing, but unfortunately I've seen a few people who are actually running events under the premise of training. But within Balloon Live, you can actually use it in training mode. You can hit markers, you can declare goals, you can download the IGC files, you can play around them. If you've got one of these training events, you can upload them and have a look at it. So you certainly can fiddle around with it. But yeah, just
awesome.
Communicate.
Cool.
Help you. I'm happy to teach more and more people how to do it.
Cool.
Sweet. I think that's pretty much. There's so much more I could show you, but I think that's probably a good snapshot. And there are training videos that you can have a look at.
For sure. Well, thanks for showing us around. I think Watch Me Fly, I think, has been a great tool for the sport to have. So I appreciate you having built it.
Well, that's fine. It's a good hobby. It's busy.
But I think I do web development. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say there was that question about the FAI and myself and how it works that way. It's probably worth knowing. So yeah, I look after the Watch Me Fly piece. It's the FAI is essentially responsible for it. So it's let's call it owned by the FAI, but I'm the custodian of it. Then from a Balloon Live perspective, there's a team. So there's Julius over in Lithuania, and who was responsible for building the app. And then there's Marc-Andre, who has been involved with FlyTech building the Balloon Line sensor. There's a number of other people. Claude Webb is kind of responsible for that technology part of the team within the FAI. So we all work really closely and have regular catch-ups. But it's worth knowing there's the balloonlive.org website. So if you've got questions or issues with the loggers, with the actual app or the sensor, you go via that. But if it's a Watch Me Fly issue, send it to me. But we're all on the same mailing list, so someone will get back to you. But I do have one appeal or ask if there is anyone who wants to get involved, who's a tech nerd, loves programming, loves doing stuff. There's plenty of projects that we've got that would love hands, because it is essentially done by volunteers. And there's interesting stuff that we would love to do, like I talked about, that 3D visualization stuff. If there's anyone out there that does that and knows how to do it, talk to us, because we've got plenty of things we'd love to do. Just need the people.
Yeah. Well,
that'd be pretty sweet.
Need to put up a volunteer button on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, talk to us.
help wanted ad.
Yeah.
On the website. So, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Catch you later. Bye.